One of the presentations I really enjoyed this morning was Vanessa's, talking about positive and upbeat. And I liked the thinking that even in adversity, even in some of the hardest times, actually that's what drives innovation, and there are opportunities there. Now, we just talked about 1947-48, aftermath of the Second World War. Are any of you familiar with the name Ronald Hobson at all? No. Ronald Hobson in 1947 spent £200. And he spent £200 on buying a bomb site in Holborn in London. And do you know what he put there? A car park. And it was the very first NCP car park. He saw an opportunity. It was just a bomb crater right in the middle of the city of London, but he saw potential because what he could see was a world developing where more and more people were becoming reliant on motor cars. And he thought, London's going to be important, it's going to be a centre point, they're going to need places to leave their cars. And that was the start of a chain. So taking hold of an opportunity of something that just looked like a hole in the ground that turned into, you know, one of our, well, in fact, the world's largest car park businesses. So there's something in here about the opportunities that we take and seeing the potential even in adversity. Now, the community and charity sector that I represent is having to change. So Corinne spoke very eloquently about the challenges facing the public sector. The charity sector has similar challenges. Now, reading some of your tweets this morning as you arrived, a lot of you were saying things like, it's nice to see so many faces I recognise, nice to see so many friends here. So let's work on the assumption that we're all friends and we can be honest with one another. We can talk candidly about how the sectors see one another. And sometimes we, in the charity sector, are seen as well-meaning, heart in the right place, a little bit amateurish, and we certainly don't get business. The leader of Exeter City Council, politically speaking, not the chief executive, who is a dear friend of mine, and if you've ever met him, you know he calls a spade an effing shovel. Whenever I make an appointment to see him, I'm usually greeted with the words, "Oh God, here comes the bloody voluntary sector, they'll be asking for money then." Now, we have had to, as a sector, adapt to moving away from a reliance on public money. And what might surprise you is that 2011-12 saw a tipping point in the charity sector in the UK. Because that was the first year where actually more of our income as a sector came from non-charitable sources than from philanthropic charitable giving. That's through trading and increasingly through contract income, delivering public services under contract as a supplier. And those opportunities are growing more and more as we speak. We've got Sally from Devon Reform, who's one of our Devon Live partners, represents the criminal justice sector in the community and charity sector locally, and we're working with the transforming rehabilitation agenda as the government looks to outsource probation work to the community sector. We want to make sure that community organisations that have the capacity and skills to work with turning offenders' lives around are in a position to do that. So we're recognising that there's a conversation going on, and if you've come here this morning thinking that the launch of Devon Live is going to be some big unveiling where we pull a sheet off a statue or something and say, there it is, there's a solution to all of this, I'm afraid you're going to be disappointed, because we don't think for a moment that's what Devon Live is, or indeed can be at this stage of the conversation. The one thing that all of our speakers talks had in common this morning is that there is a constant change. It feels like the very tectonic plates under our feet are constantly shifting. And I can really relate to what Amanda was saying, particularly when I phone County Hall these days, thinking you're going to be put through to somebody and they've gone. You know, there's a new person there, or maybe that department's not there at all. So we think what Devon Live is as a network, and I'll talk to you a little bit about that in just a moment, is going to need to continue to develop and change. People will join the conversation, will be active around particular projects, maybe not others. Devon Live is the network, the communication and the infrastructure to enable that conversation to continue and to shape Devon's response, and down to micro communities, the response of those communities to the challenges of how do we support people as public services are completely rethought. What role do businesses have to play in that? What role does the community sector have to play in that? I just want to give you a really simple example, and apologies again, it's an Exeter-centric example. Representing the community sector, I sit on the board of the Exeter Vision Partnership, which is a strategic board bringing together the council, local business leaders and other key players about how do we meet some of the challenges in Exeter. Really simple example, one of them was around flooding, nice and topical. Exeter Quay is very vulnerable to flooding. It's one of our key heritage sites as a city. It's an important site for recreation and leisure, and it's also an important part of our local economy, particularly the nighttime economy and the food and drink businesses down there. But it's also very, very vulnerable to flooding. And that had been identified, and a number of partners, the City Council, the County Council and the Environment Agency, had lobbied government and had put up some of their own money to get investment to build new flood defences. And that was announced not so long ago. The problem is this. What you would normally do is simply build a wall on the quay, about 1.5 metres high. That would stop the flooding. Now, that's not going to go down ever so well on Exeter Quay, because when you're sat at the waterfront having your pizza on a hot August evening, you don't want to stare at a wall. And also, it's unlikely to get planning permission because the quay is protected within an inch of its life in terms of listing. It's a heritage area, you don't want to spoil it. So what they've come up with are some Dutch-designed flood defences where, as the water falls into tanks as it floods, it forces the barriers up. So they're sort of self-activated by the flooding. Now here's the problem in the light of what we've heard about dwindling public services. The money's there to build these things, but they've got moving parts. And you need regular drills to make sure that they're working and that the local community, including the businesses around there, know what to do when those things go off. Also, you don't want Mrs. Jones's wheelchair to be halfway across a barrier just as it pops up. So if ever they go off in anger, you need people on site to look after it. And the Environment Agency, the County Council and the City Council at the Exeter Vision Partnership all said one by one, we've got the money for the defences, we cannot maintain them, we cannot be responsible for the drills, and we cannot be responsible if they go off. We will not have the staff to put into that. Bearing in mind these things would go off by Met Office predictions about once every 25 years. So you can't really employ somebody as a in the council to just sit by a phone waiting for this thing to go off. So there's an issue here. What do we do? Because what we could do is say, right, it's over to the business sector. You've all been stupid enough to buy businesses on the quayside, so what you're going to have to do is pay an additional levy, and from that we will fund this. That's one potential solution. Another potential solution is, well, it's over to the voluntary sector. RNLI offer run on auxiliary staff. We've got auxiliary fire staff that respond in a voluntary capacity when there's an issue. Why don't we have volunteer flood wardens? So maybe the voluntary sector's got has got the solution. But what we can't do is simply say it's over to the public services. It's your job to do it. So just a very simple example, I'm sure you can think of plenty in your own community, where actually the solution isn't going to come from any one sector or one organisation. It's going to need a conversation and a joining up of all of this. And my view is that the walls between the sectors are getting thinner and thinner, and that's what Devon Live is about. Now Devon Live, the live bit, stands for local infrastructure for voluntary enterprise, and that last word is very deliberate for all the reasons that we've heard. We cannot rely on public money anymore. It's down to us, I think as Vanessa put it, presenting ourselves, whether it's to business, the public sector, or indeed our communities as a whole, as an asset, as something to invest in, not as a burden, not as an obligation, not as people that just show up wanting a handout for keeping up the good work. So, the website, and we've got our friends from Cosmic IT here, who have built this for us, and I would heartily recommend working with Cosmic as an organisation. I mean, they get communities, they also get business. I remember sitting at a common purpose table with you, Julie, and Julie saying the problem is with social enterprises, there's too many are social and they don't get enterprise. So they're a serious business-minded organisation, but they also understand the needs of communities, and they built this for us. The Devon Live website is about hosting this conversation. Today is not a one-off. Today is really taking the conversations that we've had as partners for 2 years, as Amanda said, and starting to move those out more publicly. And we need you and organisations in your networks to get engaged with this conversation and to stay with it, because the feedback from these conversations will shape what we can do as a facilitator and as an infrastructure organisation to bring individuals within our communities, organisations and the business and public sectors together. So when you land on the page, there's effectively 3 doors through the rest of the content. So the first one for individuals is for people who want to volunteer, who want to get more involved in their communities, or maybe who want to find a business, a service, a community organisation that they want to work with, that they want to develop their ideas with, that they want to have a conversation with about the needs in their community. That doorway will take you through to our volunteering databases where people can search in their geographical area around the things that they're interested in and find what opportunities there are to get involved there. Or indeed, we've got Fiona with us today, people who are looking for training opportunities through community-based learning, education and skills development to play a greater part in their communities. If you're a community group or organisation, we want you to register through the organisations portal. And through there you have access to tools, to forums and to funding advice, which I'll come on to shortly, because I'm sure that's a bit that a lot of us in the community sector are most interested in just now. And when you register with us, you will tag your organisation by areas that you work in, that you're interested in, that you want to have conversations with others about. That enables us behind the website to group you into what we call communities of practice. So we can see at a glance which organisations, for instance, are saying, we're really interested in older people's care, or we're really interested in children and young people, or environment and ecology. That then means that if a public sector body is looking at a project or a response around a particular area, we can very quickly start that conversation with the networks of groups that have flagged themselves up as having an interest in that area. It enables this conversation to be responsive and focused on a particular area of interest. And then the final portal is around the business sector and public services who want to explore their corporate social responsibility, their impact on their own sense of place around their business, or are looking for partners in the community sector, or looking even at volunteering. Now we're in Exeter looking at a pilot project at the moment called Exeter Hive, which is about putting volunteers from the volunteer centre into fledgling businesses. Because as we heard about Top Mess, I think from Kevin, and the concept of money staying within a local economy, we understand that by having a rich network of grassroots businesses and enterprises, that will have benefits to the community that we're trying to serve. And we're prepared to put volunteers into those businesses right at their start to help them get off the ground. The catch is that the business then signs a pledge with the community sector to say, as we grow and develop, we will recognise our debt to the community and we will give back in some way. Now that might be through giving to the Community Foundation, yes please, says Martha. That might be through sitting as a trustee on a local charity, bringing your business acumen to support them. It might be through offering placements to unemployed people in the local community who can develop their skills in that way, or in many, many other ways. But in some way, that relationship is built right at the very birth of the business. So we would encourage you to go through that. There are also tools that are available to businesses, including a diversity tool that enables you, working with some of our specialist diversity organisations, part of our network, to look at your recruitment practices and your accessibility to your customers. Are you reaching every section of the community in the way that you could? Right, let me talk very quickly about the funding portals. This is the bit I always get nervous about, just in case it doesn't work. So, two of those. I think the thing that's come up time and time again is money is tight. Money's getting tighter. So we have set up two portals. One is called Devon for Business, and we will circulate these slides, so you'll have the addresses. They're also accessible through the main Devon Live website. So for those of you from a business background that are working in private business, getting your hands on investment and capital and credit at the moment is very, very difficult. Open for Business, this is just the local branding of that. It's a national network. They have 42 researchers working on this in real time, looking at what's coming out, what the criteria for it are. You can browse it by different categories, or the more exciting function is the smart search, which we'll come on to demonstrate in just a minute. And from the business perspective, it's not only looking at grant funding from government and the EU, but also soft credit options, social investment, and so on. So I know we've got Mike here from Cartridge's Business Hub, so I'm going to use you as a guinea pig, Mike. I hope that's all right. It's fine with me. And please don't be too awkward. I've only ever run one of these once, and it didn't come up with anything, and it was a very obscure arts project, so I'm hoping this will work all right. Can everyone see it okay? Right, what type of business are you, Mike? It can be a real one or it can be a conceptual one.
It's a business placing people who want to learn Chinese in China.
Fantastic, thank you for that. Should we be a limited company or a not-for-profit or a
limited?
Limited.
Specifically Mandarin.
I'm not sure it's going to go quite that specific. So you're educational.
Yeah. Yes, definitely.
How many employees do you think you've got?
None at the moment.
So up to 9.
Yes.
Are you turning anything over at the minute?
No.
Less than 100. So you're a startup, are you?
Yeah, it's a startup.
Okay, and we're looking for funding for from this little list. Starting up, development. Starting up. Okay, then what it will do is take you through funding opportunities that are local, national, and if I scroll down it will also go on to European. So these are some of the funds that are currently available to you, and you'll see over here there's a match bar. So it will take what you've put in as being your area of interest, and it will look at, behind the scenes if you like, look at what the criteria for the funder are, and will give you an approximate match. Obviously the higher, so 80% down here, would probably make sense that that's the one you apply to first. Now if you were to click on that for details, it will then take you through, let's give it a go, it will then take you through to the registration page. So this is where we want you to join up with us, so you would register. And from that point on, if any other funds go live that match the criteria you've put in, you'll get an email alert to tell you that new ones are up there and available to you. The community one, for those of you from community organisations, I've just clocked the time, so I'm going to have to wind up, works in exactly the same way. So the type of organisation you are, the area of interest, your geographical area, size, what you want the money for, and again it will throw up government funding, lottery funding, and funding from grant-making organisations. Register with us, you can then go through to the full details of any of those funds. It will have links to their websites, downloadable forms, guidance, advice that you need, and it's all there for you. Now this is going to be part of the Devon Live membership and affiliation. Now the good news for you this morning is if you register between now and September, you can play around with this and the website as much as you like for free, because we are building this to host this conversation and to develop it. So all we are asking for in return for you having free use of this is please feed back to us how you're finding it. We've time banked with Cosmic some time for their guys to continue to work on this, develop it and refine it. It needs your feedback about how that's working for you. Whether it's this, whether it's the forums on the website, or whether it's the tools and the downloadable content of the website. We need to hear how you're using it, how it's supporting you, and particularly the good news stories, the times that this is helping you with funding and so on. There's also an area on the funding portals which is about local support. So if you have services that you offer to businesses, if it's this portal, or to community organisations, if it's the other one, and you want to make those organisations aware of the support that you offer, you will have a chance to advertise on here as well. So as well as looking for funding, Fruit Tree are one of our partner organisations, for instance, we want to make sure that the Fruit Tree are able to say, getting hold of the funding or identifying the funding is one thing, but you're going to need some help with your business planning, with writing and developing your bids. These are services we can offer you. Similarly, if you offer premises or transport or whatever, it'd be good to put all of that in. Right, feels like I've really rattled through it. I'll just take questions very briefly because we need to come on to the table discussions. Has anyone got any questions around any of that content?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
No, it's not a question.
It's a question, but not quite about.
That's fine.
Yeah, that's okay.
I'm here with 2 hats on, so mine's sort of voluntary sector hat. Are you intending to do sort of Devon Live promotional events across Devon to make sure that community organisations across Devon are aware of it? Because in my local community, I can think of loads of small CICs and voluntary community organisations who will benefit from this, but I'm not sure they're aware.
Sure. The difficulty we've got is that there's Devon Live for conversation and there's Devon Live for network, and quite deliberately there is not Devon Live the thing, the organisation. We've deliberately not set up a company or anything like that, because we actually think the response we need, in the light of all that we heard this morning, needs to be very light on its feet, able to change and adapt and shape. So today's very much about moving that conversation more publicly. It's down to the network that's here today and that has already been engaging with us in other forums to then take that message elsewhere. The more people that register, the more organisations, small groups that register on the website, obviously the bigger the network and the conversation grows. And so it's very much about collaboration, it's very much about spreading that network. So if there's a particular part of Devon that you're from and you're thinking there's very little awareness, please go and tell everyone about it, get them registered, and that's the format for growing this. There isn't, I'm employed by CBS, we've got partners here from Devon Community Foundation, from Preschool Learning Alliance, from Voice Devon, Steve at the back from Southwest Forum. We're a collection of different organisations. We need other people to sort of just take the voice. None of us are employed to just be Devon Live. We're doing this because we believe in it, as well as doing our day jobs, if you see what I mean.
Right. How are you going to promote it to businesses?
Through businesses.
Okay, because I don't see any businesses here today.
No, but we invited a lot of businesses.
I know,
so
but
this
that's
is
what I'm
the
saying.
way. Yeah.
How are you going to get them into it? How are you going to grab hold of them?
Well, then through businesses. I mean, the same argument always. The point that Simon has made is absolutely clear. You know, there is no money to do this. We don't have a budget for marketing and communications. There is no, actually this is a group of like-minded people that have come together to do something because we think it's worth doing. But so actually, if you
I'm on your side.
no, I know you are. I know, but what I'm saying is, so therefore, if there's a conversation about how we do that with businesses, and there are people in the room who would like to do that, then we would be ecstatic if somebody would like to take that forward. But it's not going to be a question of saying this is a good idea, go off and do it, because actually there is no resource to do that.
Okay. I'm just interested in the thoughts about
Yeah.
how you're going to engage those businesses, capture their imagination.
I think the conversation at lunch, Mike, is how do us asking you, how do we take this to business?
No, but actually.